Now, before we get into these 20 growth tactics, what I want to cover off and what I want to teach you is about targeting and about understanding the size of your market and how you're going to approach that market, what the audience size is, and how this is affected by what the cost of what you're selling is, so that you can approach the growth tactics more effectively once we get into that part. And this targeting piece is really important. So there are a couple of metaphors that I'm going to use throughout this course, and really the key ones to understand are the difference between casting a wide net and spearfishing. So these are easy metaphors to understand. So I'm going to put a table up here and walk you through all of these numbers. I'm going to go from right to left, because on the right hand side what we're doing is we're being very focused with our targeting. We're effectively going spearfishing and going after a small number of customers versus casting a wide net on the left hand side. So let's start on the right first of all. This is a strategic market approach where the number of clients that we're targeting at any one time is very small, just a few customers. And the median number in this group is 14. And so the relationship that we have is generally one-to-one. And the messaging that we create is one-to-one as well. So there's a very small number of people in a single target group, and we go after that group with a very, very focused messaging. And we could potentially be selling something with a ticket value as high as, say, $1 million or £1 million, €1 there or thereabouts. Perhaps over the course of 1 year, not always in one go, but as a kind of a lifetime contract value over, say, 1 to 3 years. As we move left and we go to a sort of a focused market approach, now we're looking at dozens of clients. And this is typically, or the median number here is 80. And what this might look like is actually 3 or 4 groups of perhaps 20 customers. And so that's why the number here is 1 to few, because what we've actually got is a very, very targeted set of marketing messages to one group, say of 20 customers, another slightly different, but not radically different, but a different marketing message to another group, perhaps in another industry vertical of another 20 customers, and so on. So that's why it's 1 to few. It's not a few customers, but it's a few groups. And here the value is about 100,000 up to 1 million. As we go left, our approach becomes more programmatic, because now we need to reach hundreds of customers. And with hundreds of customers here, the relationship is one to many. There are going to be multiple different groups of customers within that subset. Median here 725, value 50 to 100,000. As we move left, we're getting on to targeted demand gen. Now we're looking at mass marketing techniques, generally getting much smaller in contract value until we get to demand gen. Again, mass marketing focused on millions of people below $10,000. And so the relationship that we have with each of these groups is very different. On the far left, we have a purely automated relationship or no relationship. What becomes, as we move to the right, is just one that is transactional. As we move further to the right, we're becoming a nurtured relationship. And eventually, for those B2B higher ticket value, complex sales that are low velocity, things that aren't sold instantly, sort of on the phone or in one single transaction, we become consultative. We need to spend time with the customer. We need to understand their needs. We need to walk through what their pains are, and we need to understand them. There might be multiple stages through the sale, and so there's that consultative need. And as we get to the far right, we're actually collaborative. This is where we're almost a strategic partner with our customers. We're delivering much higher value offers, and so obviously those transactions don't happen quickly. They take a very long time. We're often developing solutions specifically on a bespoke basis for the customer on that far right hand side. So the relationship is different from left to right. The contract value is different from left to right. The approach to market is different from left to right. And so on the right-hand side, we're generally hand-picking our customers because there are so few of them. We're very clear about who they are, and that's why we can go spearfishing. This is great when we're actually in this position. We can go spearfishing. We can hand-pick those customers. Whereas at the other end, the marketing techniques that we use are generally what I call spray and pray. We're looking at capturing as many people as possible and seeing who we can snag in our net. So have a think about how the sales cycle varies for these different categories of market approach, how the buyer varies, how the seller varies for each of these. Have a think about that for a moment. So the sales cycle on the far left, the sales cycle is instant. There's no delay. The sales cycle is almost momentary. But on the right hand side, and when I've done this in workshops, I've had people even say that they've had the sales cycle be 10 years. They've just won a customer. It took them 10 years to get that customer. So very, very long sales cycle on the right hand side. So we need to be aware aware of that. The buyer is also different. The buyer on the far right-hand side is likely to be somebody very senior in a business and actually not one single person. The buyer on the right-hand side here in the collaborative will be an entire buying team. And if it was over a course of multiple years, 10 years, in fact, that buying team would change, which is another challenge in the sale. It's another challenge that we have to confront. Whereas the buyer on the left-hand side, it's B2C, it's just instant, it's a small contract value, somebody just wants it and they buy it. The seller is also different. So on the left-hand side, yeah, it's a website selling, it's automated, it's happening 24/7. As we go to the right, there actually needs to be a seller involved. Initially, maybe just a relatively low-level sales rep, but as we get to the far right, what we actually need is somebody relatively high up in your own business that is able to have the strategic business conversation in order to be able to make that sale. If I took the example of, say, Elon Musk selling rockets to NASA, well, that's obviously not done as a transactional sale. It's also not done as a low-level person knocking on the door of NASA and saying, "Hey, do you want to buy my rockets?" That's Elon going into NASA and saying, "Hey, we understand that your biggest cost is launch, and we've got a way of solving that with a reusable rocket." And that's how you get multi-billion-dollar contracts. So the sales cycle, the buyer, the seller, all of these things change depending where you sit on this spectrum. So what I want you to start to get an idea of is where you sit on this spectrum and whether you want to move slightly more to the left or slightly more to the right based on where you sit at the moment. And if you're in B2B sales, mostly what I experience is that people are actually thinking that they can go for more of a mass market approach when actually they could go spearfishing. There's one more overlay that I want to give you to this, and that's that I want you to understand how marketing and sales spread across this marketing approach matrix. Marketing is heavy on the left, but tapers off as we go to the right. Marketing might support sales, but marketing isn't dominant as we get to the right. Coming in from the right-hand side, sales is dominant. Sales is how we win big contract value, not by marketing. Marketing might be there with some supporting material. So we have a crossover here, and these aren't exact graphs, these triangles I've put up here. But what I want you to understand is that as we go to the right, as we go higher in sales value, as we need to be more collaborative and consultative and have a higher, tighter relationship with our customers, as the customer spends more, our sales effort becomes dominant. Our sales effort becomes primary, and marketing is there as support. Whereas on the left-hand side, if you're selling low-value items, it's too expensive to run sales. You do everything with marketing. So I also want you to understand this overlayer as well. And if you feel that you're actually further to the right than you maybe were before you kind of listened to this, then think about this. You have to stop automating everything. There's this idea on the internet right now that everything can be automated. And don't get me wrong, AI can automate a huge amount of things, and what can be automated should be automated. But relationships can't easily be automated, and high contract sales, high value, low velocity, B2B, strategic consultative sales, that you can't really automate that. So don't think about how you automate everything in your business. It's trust that you need to scale, not always traffic. Traffic's great, but in relationships, if you're on that right-hand side, if you need to go spearfishing, then it's trust that you need to scale.